Hello, this is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this awful ad that I saw from Ron DeSantis's team, his war room, rapid fire war room account, made an ad and shared it, and it's pretty awful and awful and all the and not just quality and who it's supposed to be hitting, and it just misses the mark. I saw only one person who seemed to like it. I saw some people who said it was based, and I don't know how serious of a person they were, but most people are like, this is awful, who saw it. And I just gotta share it with you guys and go from there, because I think it really concerns me, really worries me. And I say this as a not negative on DeSantis person, because you guys know that I do like DeSantis, but it shows this particular issue shows a lack of good sense. So I think that he needs to fire some people, to be honest. So we'll get into that. Also, Jen Psaki, she did a video about how she thinks that Republicans, the GOP, is using particular issues to divide Americans, and particularly the Muslim community. But we didn't write the Quran, so I don't. It's just major gaslighting. So we'll go through her video and go through her talking points as well. It's just a crazy day for sure. But anyway, before we jump into it, please go to blackteennews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, etc. If you would like different merchandise, that you guys can check out different merchandise on the website as well. Let me just pop up a thing or two. Tomorrow is 4th of July. I'll show you what I'll be wearing. I'll be wearing, of course, the Constitution is a glorious liberty document. That is what I will be sporting tomorrow. Because we live in a great country. Now, this is actually from the What is the 4th of July to a Slave speech by Frederick Douglass. It is an amazing speech. If you have not actually read it, I encourage you guys to take the time to actually do that. But a lot of people will, I'm sure, bring up this speech tomorrow just for some context, and say things like, oh, it's not for Black people because they were enslaved and at one point, and they'll quote mine things from the speech. But the speech is really great because he just challenged people to rise to the occasion and to meet the expectations of the American dream. So if you haven't read it, you should read it, because it really does remind me of so many issues that we're facing today and how so many other people need to be stirred to do the right thing for humanity. I want to thank people in the chat, people who watching live, people who watch it back later. Thank you very much for being with me. And if you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blackteennews.com. Also stream, run my website, all that good stuff. So if you can support, I thank you very much. If you can't do that, I understand. Buy inflation is not great, but watching helps. Adding different people, telling them about the show, all those things really do help. So I thank you very much for just being part of the broadcast and for being part of the conversation. So I don't have actually I did find something that I thought was kind of funny, but I don't have it pulled up. So I'm just going to go right into the story with DeSantis before, and then I'll get into the Jen Psaki thing. And those will probably be the only two things that I really jump into today. But I saw this, and I started the morning seeing this Jen Psaki thing and being like, ready to go. I was so ready to go. I'm like, I'm ready to just go at her and just, whittle her down to nothing with her talking points, with her awful talking points and stuff. And then I saw this DeSantis thing, and it just totally killed my mood, killed my buzz, because it just really disappointed me. Because if you're unaware, I used to work for the Michigan Republican Party, and I did videos and graphics. So basically everything, at least that came out of the Michigan Republican Party during I got hired in 2015, and then I left in 2017, sometime in 2017. So like the 2016 cycle when Trump won, like I'm the one who was producing a lot of videos and stuff. One video that I made that went pretty viral on Facebook, because we could never get traction on YouTube, was 50 Reasons Not to Vote for Hillary Clinton. That really got around. And so I did other things that really got around. The first thing that I did that really got traction was I did a Friends Day. It was National Friends Day. So I was like, oh my gosh. And I didn't find out until I went to work that it was Friends Day. And then I just thought of like the Burn Book from no, was it Burn Book or no, that's another thing. I since it was Friends Day, I'm like, oh my gosh, let me like do something about Hillary's friends, the kind of like shady people that she's associates herself with. So I started, gathering photos and stuff, and my office mate Ross, who's the digital director, helped me, with different people and stuff. And so we just, got a bunch of photos of Hillary and her shady people. And it's like, here's your friends. And it's like, remember this? And what I guess Facebook did a special video. It was like Friends Day or whatever. So the video looked like Facebook's thing. So I had a lot of fun with my job. I was very like reserved in my office. So people were like, does she like her job? Like they'd ask my sister. And she's like, no, she's having a great time, because I just kind of zoned in my computer, letting my creative juices flow. And my sisters would call me the Queen of Shade. People call me Queen of Shade. They didn't call me Queen of Shade at work, but I that was my title to me anyway. So I had a lot of fun. So I do have professional experience and expertise while looking at this kind of stuff. And I think this is so terrible. It's terrible. So I will not delay any longer. We will jump into it, and then I will explain in detail why I think that this is so bad. And I'm disappointed. Now, you guys, I don't know, it seems like a lot of you who watch me are in the primary, are either Trump or DeSantis, and most of you seem like you're pro-Trump team. And I know there's a lot of people, at least on Facebook, who are, excited about DeSantis and want to give him a shot instead. But here's the thing: if you can't run a good campaign in the primary, people are going to be very concerned whether you can go the distance in the general. And Trump made a lot of different mistakes. I mean, there's a benefit to running multiple campaigns. Go as an elected official, and you have to run again and again, and then you tried for dog catcher, and you went up to city council, and then you went up to to your state legislature, and then you got to Congress, and you moved up to the Senate. So you know how, not only how different legislative bodies work, and getting your name ID out there, and how to fundraise. You're building a lot of experience, especially on the campaign front. Now, if you just kind of jump into it, then you're kind of screwed. Now, DeSantis has done a couple campaigns, but if you recall, if you're paying attention, he did not run a great campaign when he ran and won for governor. And I was glad we eked that out. And you guys are so lucky in Florida that you got DeSantis rather than Andrew Gillum. If you're familiar with Andrew Gillum and what happened to him, you're very, very fortunate that he pulled that out. But he was having a rough time. Now he won by 19 points, got reelected because, people like him actually in his governing sort of role, but he's not running to be the governor of Florida for a third term. He's running to try to be president of the United States. So he has to run a national campaign against someone who, he's not the incumbent. but he was the incumbent. A lot of people love him. He obviously has huge name ID, and people know that despite some flaws on the man, that they still feel that he did a good job, and a lot of people feel loyal to him because they feel that he was always fighting for them, and he'll take the slings and the arrows and stuff. So he's fighting against a lot to try to convince people that, hey, you should choose me. And his main pitch and his most honest pitch is Trump has an issue with moderates. He has an issue with independents. And if he can't get those, not only he's going to lose, we're going to lose big. There's states like Georgia and other places that are going to be up for grabs if he's on the table. DeSantis's pitch is, I can win in the general, Trump can't. That's his pitch. Whether you believe or not, that's the pitch. Okay? If there's not like nonstop competency throughout this campaign, I don't know how you make that claim. I don't know how you make that claim, especially with something like this that's going to come off as uber radical to moderates. So it really bugs me. It really bugs me. And I think some heads need to roll for this going out there. I don't think they should bother apologizing, because I don't know, it seems like if you're apologizing, you're losing, and people who some people will never, appreciate your apology anyway. But here we go. We're about to
everything in my power.
Let me start that back and get rid of my face here. So here we go.
I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens.
If Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses.
That is correct.
In the future, can transgender women compete in Miss Universe?
Yes.
Make America great again.
Psych!
Think of anything more horrifying.
It really has shut down drag.
Just produced some of the harshest, most draconian laws that literally threaten trans existence.
Congratulations, Ron DeSantis. Mission accomplished. You win.
So, okay, so I thought that was awful. And first of all, the editing of it, the music, the headlines, the shaking, the glowing eyes. I question who is that for. I see someone from Florida is in the chat. You can let me know how you feel about that ad. So who's it for? Now, people do all kinds of stuff on Twitter that's along that vein or something, but that's definitely like that's Sway's younger. Like they got all that the buffed, what are those Chad memes and other stuff like that, like hyper masculine. Some people are saying it's like undercover homoerotic or whatever, that ad. Yeah, my sister said that seemed like a fan-made video. That totally looks like a fan-made video and not something from the Ron DeSantis war room that's like hype, their rapid response team. And I went to go, people are definitely criticizing it on Twitter. There's news articles about it. I was going to write an article about it, still am. It's just really not a good look. So like who's it for? That audience, it seems like it's what, 18-year-olds, 18-year-old men. Is that what it's for? Like hyper masculine 18-year-old dudes? Is that who that ad is for? Because do you know who's a lot of people feel like, hey, we don't want, all the stuff happening in school with the kids, that, having the explicit material, or having, the drag story hours and stuff like that. But a lot of people who are concerned about that, maybe they don't have kids, but a lot of people are people with kids. So like the suburban mom, right? The suburban mom, the churchgoer, the dad who doesn't want his daughter to have to swim against a man and then have to go shower with them too. Like those are the kinds of people that appreciate his legislation and think it's fair. But if it's like glowing eyes, we're coming at you, it makes the intent, to me, especially my first viewing of it, come off more malicious than I think was the intent. So it's not a great ad. And the style of it's definitely not targeted toward me, but as far as like right-wing policies and stuff, people are like, well, why don't you be a libertarian? I'm pretty conservative, guys. People are like, well, I like you because you're not crazy. I appreciate that, but you don't think I'm crazy because I can articulate my positions pretty well, and I'm not malicious or anything like that. I'm fair. I believe in equal rights and other stuff like that. But I'm a pretty traditional, multi-time church goer person. So you would think, I would assume that I'm the kind of person that Ron DeSantis wants to shift from. Like, I voted for Trump twice, and he would like me to vote for him, and to look at an ad like that and see Trump saying, oh, well, Caitlyn Jenner can use whatever bathroom that Caitlyn wants to use, and trans women can go in Miss Universe or whatever in the future. Which, by the way, I didn't forget those things. I never forgot those things. I remember when Trump said that in 2016, and there was a video of like Caitlyn Jenner or Bruce Jenner going to the hotel or whatever, or Trump Tower, and maybe using or whatever, they showed using the bathroom or whatever. But and I was not happy. I was not happy. As a matter of fact, I remember Trump going on Hannity. Like, he had the position. It was like he said something that he thought everyone wanted to hear, and then there was backlash, and then he kind of tried to clean it up a bit, and then he went on Sean Hannity's show. And I used to watch Sean's show pretty religiously, and but he had an interview with Trump, and Sean would kind of introduce a question as an answer. And he's like, well, you believe in this, blah, blah, blah. Isn't that right, sir? And the way that he was kind of feeding the interview, I really didn't like it. I really didn't like it. So that was around the time when I was really getting frustrated with Trump in that primary season too. Because I'm like, bro, are you serious right now? Like, come on. So Trump had a lot of issues himself when he was a candidate. But Trump also went through like 3 campaign managers, right? It took a while to get to Kellyanne Conway, and that was very late in his campaign run, and she was, really great at her job. So I think DeSantis is making some errors that they need to turn back away from. I think this ad was really bad, and I think everyone associated probably needs to be gone. Like, whoever made it, who approved it. And if it went all the way up to Ron DeSantis and he was like, oh yeah, that's awesome, he needs to look around at the folks around him, because there always needs to be someone in the room who tells a candidate, that's a trash idea, sir. When I made any material for the Michigan Republican Party, I made it, right? And then I would send it to my boss. Maybe I show it to Ross first or something, because he was also executive director and we shared an office. But I would have to share it to my boss, the comms director, and the comms director would have to sign off on it. And after the comms director signed off on it, all the other directors had to sign off on it. And after all the other like lower directors kind of signed off of it, the executive director, who actually like was over the day-to-day kind of operations, not the chair, but the person who was hired by the chair to basically run the party, would sign off of it. So you'd have to have all these different people agree before I could even put a video out. So it was different when someone like ran like, I don't know, posting some photos of an event or something, or if, you know, I was sharing an article, you know, they could trust me to do things like that. But that wasn't mostly my job. That was the digital director's job. I used to make the bullets and he would fire them, is what he would say. But it just shows such bad judgment to me. And maybe you got, I'm trying to look at your someone said looks like the video looks like a college freshman video project for a computer class. Yeah, it doesn't look like and then Christina Pushaw, I don't know if I'm saying her last name right, but she was like the comms director for DeSantis, and now she's doing stuff for the campaign. You know, the only thing I saw, I know she's talking about it, but because I looked to see what she was saying about it, but she kind of brushed it off like, oh, it's like a dank meme thing on Twitter. Ooh, it's not a big deal. And Twitter, social media is such a huge part of campaigns. And it's not just the fact that it's on Twitter. It's the fact I'm talking about it. Obviously, I didn't like it. And I'm on there. I'm Republican. I'm very open-minded to DeSantis. And so I didn't like it. I'm talking about it. It's on CNN articles. Other journalists are talking about it. I saw like precisely like one conservative commentator who was like, yes, always go from the right. And I'm like, I think we should maintain how strong we are on the right. Absolutely. Don't compromise our values and beliefs and whatnot. But you know what? There's still people in the middle who are, you know, who they have to appeal to. So if your main appeal is Trump can't appeal to moderates or can't appeal to independents, but I can, then you're gonna have to not scare them half to death with dank memes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, my sister said, how is comparing DeSantis to the Wolf of Wall Street and Peaky Blinders a good thing? That's a good question. Like especially if you're going from the route of, I don't know, we need to have some restoration of morality and family values and other things like that. And you're like, yeah, here's Wolf of Wall Street. So whatever kind of atmosphere or energy that they're appealing to, that's not who they need to reach and build this coalition with. It's not correlating. Again, who is this ad for? 18-year-olds who are barely old enough to vote, and well, I guess they wouldn't be Trump voters before, you know, fresh, you know, flock for them to try to herd into the ballot, to the polling locations. But if you want to seriously make the case that people who voted for Trump should vote for DeSantis now, you got to show some more wisdom than that. Do I think that's worse than Trump having Kanye and Nick Fuentes at Mar-a-Lago? No, I don't. But I think Trump has proven that he can just get away with more stuff. DeSantis is at a disadvantage. People love Trump so much. He has to convince people who have been ride or die with this man to switch their vote. Now, there's people who are sick of him and want to try something different. But if they're sick of Trump for a bunch of, like, the things he tweets and the stuff he says, why is stuff like that going to appeal to those voters? they can still say, oh, I like, he's not as bad, or he can still govern well. But people who are sick of the mean tweets probably don't want your mean tweets. Your dank memes. Oh, this is so frustrating. This is so frustrating. It seems like everyone thought that was a dumb video. So I think I seriously think he needs to shift stuff around, because there's so much conversation about it just being blatantly homophobic. And it put people in very awkward positions, because you have people like I don't know what Dave Rubin said about it. I didn't look at his page, but Dave Rubin is a libertarian commentator, and he loves him some DeSantis. Which some people are pushing back on this video of DeSantis, because they're like, okay, if Trump is, bad because Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner could go to the bathroom in Trump Tower, why isn't DeSantis bad for sending onesies to Dave Rubin, who, through surrogacy has children now, and now they're going to live a life without their mother. So people are like, what about that? If you're gonna try to come off as the anti-gay one, and I don't know if that was their intention, but that's how the video reads. And so Gays Against Groomers, I'm sure you guys have heard of maybe them before. It really put them in a tough spot. Let me see if I can find their tweet about it. Because and essentially, I guess I can sum it up unless I can't find it really quick. But they didn't like it. They didn't appreciate it. They're still going to vote for him, but makes him look kind of bad. Makes him look really bad. And it was the I don't know if I don't think the organization themselves said something, but the woman who's over it, who is a lesbian, and they also noted that using Lady MAGA, and I don't know his real name, not off the top of my head anyway, using him, he's not associated with the Trump campaign, with the Trump presidency or anything. He's just a fan of Trump. He's just a fan of Trump, goes to the rallies or whatever, and also fought, for against different bills that targeted kids, trans kids and stuff, and speaks out against that stuff. Now, I don't like drag at all. I think it's disturbing. I think it's disgusting. I'm disgusted by it. So and I don't mean just in general, I don't like it. So again, if I don't like this ad, it doesn't appeal to me. It looks like it goes too far. So here's Jamie Mitchell. There's no T in it. Can't be Mitchell. Michelle. My thoughts are this. I think it is in poor taste to see Lady MAGA USA in this video, as Ryan Woods, the person underneath the drag costume, has fought extremely hard to protect children from the radical rainbow agenda and testified on behalf of Gays Against Groomers in Utah on SB 16, which then passed banning gender-affirming care on minors in his state. Do I think the culture war looks different now than it did in 2016 and 2020? Absolutely. Do I think Trump's support of biological males and women's spaces is gross and fair play to campaign against? Yes, I do. And side note, that's where it should have ended. That's where the ad should have ended. The problem with the DeSantis campaign and some of their stuff is it goes too far. They have a good point and then they go too far. Like the Fauci, they did an ad with Fauci and Trump. And they had all these videos of Trump being with Fauci, being agreeable with Fauci. We all know that he gave Fauci a lot of command and control. And people will say, oh, well, he couldn't just fire him because he would have came after him. So the alternative was just to let everybody lock down for forever. Okay. Hindsight is 2020, but heavy is the crown, head that wears the crown. He gets the blame. He gets the success, the praise when things go right. And he gets the blame when he makes a mistake, right? So they had all these clips of him and Fauci, but they went the extra step and they had an AI, like 2-3 AI images of Trump embracing Fauci. You didn't need that. And Tim Pool has been upset for like a month about that. Like, I don't know if he tweets every day about it, but he's so ticked off about that. And he doesn't, I don't even think he wants to vote for DeSantis anymore because he feels like that was crossing such a line, such an egregious line. And I thought it was in poor taste, you know, and Tim Pool thinks that they should apologize. I think apologizing for a lot of stuff is a waste of you know, in campaigns is probably wasted time for a lot of folks. I think they should just do better. But a part of accountability is restructuring, I think. So again, attacking is fine, but do you have to go that far? There's some campaigns and different campaign ads that are egregious and go too far, and they're successful and they get the win. There was that ad with the truck that looked like they was chasing down black kids. We remember that. There was the ad with, like, was it Paul Ryan, like, wheeling grandma off a cliff and stuff. And ads like that are disgusting when they cross a line. I never wanted to cross a line. I wanted things that I said when people looked into them to be like, oh, that's true. And it's maybe even worse than I thought. You know, there were routes with different things that I could have went and I didn't. And not everyone feels the same. And by the way, Trump, they got ads out where they're basically lying. You know, I was so disappointed with Trump's people, who encouraged like attacks on Kathy Barnett during the Pennsylvania race. And I was so disappointed by how she was treated and how they just took different videos of her and chopped them up so much to make her seem like a BLM kind of person, and when she's not. And just to get Dr. Oz the nomination, and we know what happened now. We now have Fetterman. and maybe Barnett probably would have lost. I think money probably wouldn't have circulated around her enough to get her over the finish line anyway. And I think McCormick would have been the best pick, but to win, and he could obviously fund a lot of stuff himself, but maybe he would have won, maybe he wouldn't have won. I don't know, but I know Oz wasn't a good pick, and he had some pretty radical positions. Plus, he didn't live in the state. But they doubled down. And they were willing to slander someone in the process. And I hated that. And it genuinely, it's one thing to be upset and angry. I was genuinely disappointed. You don't have to, I know people compromise their integrity all the time. You don't have to do that. You don't. Let me go on. Okay. Do I think Trump doesn't really have any principles and runs on whatever is popular at the moment? Also, yes. I was grateful to President Trump for being the first president in U.S. history to enter office being pro-gay marriage. The reason I originally even made this account of mine was to show that not all people supporting Trump are straight white men. I do think this video is a bit of a slap in the face to myself and other rational gays who not only don't have a home on the left due to the Democrats' destructive policies, but who have worked hard to show that the Republican Party is for everyone. I also don't believe this video is attacking us directly. Overall, as a right-wing lesbian, do I love the video? No, I don't. Do I understand why they put it out? Do I think it will alienate younger voters? Yes, but that's another thing about the structure of this video. There's a lot of young voters who don't care about they don't like maybe some of the super uber radical policies of the left. Maybe obviously if they're conservative, but there's a lot of the young people who don't care about like the LGBT issues like that. So who is this for? It's for an imaginary voter. It's so dumb. I didn't have time, but I was gonna have like the Tyra Banks clip where have you ever seen that video of Top Model when she's yelling at a girl? I'm sure you've seen memes or seen the GIFs when she's like, "Oh, we were rooting for you. How dare you?" And also, I didn't see Glass Onion, but there's it's so dumb. It's so dumb. The first like, it's so dumb, it's brilliant. He's like, no, it's just dumb. Like, it's so dumb. Do I think it would alienate younger voters? Yes, but I'm not sure if it matters right now. Caving to and appeasing them is how we've become the party of losers that we are today. That's a good point there. This is a big mistake. It's not worth folding in everything, but I would like to see some more competency than this. Am I a single issue voter that will now overlook all of Trump's failures and baggage and run back to him over it? Also, no. I'm still voting for the only Republican that can beat Biden in the general and has done more than any other politician to eviscerate the left's agenda during his time in office. Sorry for the novel. So, and she also added, I forgot to mention that I also think this video is definitely going to turn away moderates and independents from DeSantis. One of the most important things about him is that he can win those people over. This will play against that hard. So that is correct, I think. Now it's early and people will just maybe kind of forget for a little bit, but it stings on the internet, live forever. This will go. Someone will probably put this on TV in 2024 if he was the general election candidate. So I think maybe it might be harsh to say right off the bat, like, because I don't know all the inner workings of who's putting this out and who's approving it or whatever. I just know that I think someone's head should roll. If I had done something like this while I worked at the Michigan Republican Party, I wouldn't have a job. I wouldn't have had a job. But they would have never allowed me to put it out there. If I followed procedure, if I did it on my own accord, yeah, I'd be gone for sure. For sure. But could I have gotten that up the chain of command and everybody be like, oh yeah, sure, put that out there? Never would have happened. And by the way, we weren't like a team of old people there. Everyone was like in their mid 30s at the latest and down, who worked there. And Ronna McDaniel was a chair at the time, but she was in the office often. And we didn't have to get like approved, like I don't know how often they had to get her approval for stuff. There was someone in the office who acted on her behalf. So they maybe had to ask her like 1 or 2 times about some kind of approval or whatever, but mostly everyone was young. There were some times I had an idea and they didn't get it. and I had to like pull their arm and twist their arms and maybe compromise on some stuff. Eventually they mostly learned to trust me on different things. But yeah, something like this would have never, and not just beyond like the style of memes today. It was different back then, but never. Absolutely never. And I know not all groups and organization has that same system. Maybe they should have a similar system like that when you're talking about something that can impact donor dollars and support. If someone literally being the president, you should have really strong measures in place. So, oy, oy vey. Oy vey. I'm gonna have to go back and see if Dave Rubin said anything. The meme, now that I've mentioned it and you guys have seen this, maybe I can just go find the meme really quickly that I thought about sharing. I guess I'll go ahead and share it. Again, Dave Rubin is a gay libertarian who is really a DeSantis darling right now. And so people are like, oh, I wonder what he would say about this ad. And so probably like, why is she laughing? So so someone made a meme of Ron DeSantis throwing him off of a rooftop. So Yeah, I wonder what Dave has to say about it. I wonder, why did they say too late? Someone said, would Ron DeSantis and Casey DeSantis allow Dave Rubin to babysit their kids? And someone said too late. So yeah, they put a lot of people in bad positions for making something like that. Just whoever is responsible for it, you got to give them, I would say get rid of them. But definitely at least you have to have some measures in place to stop things like that. And if it did go up a chain of command and everyone was like, oh, that's awesome, you definitely need restructuring. By the way, there was another thing I'm briefly going to mention, because I was on the phone with my sister. She used to work for the RNC, and she was the director of urban engagement and women engagement. And so I was complaining about this, and then she started complaining to me about Ron DeSantis first. And so she had seen a story that I think it was New Hampshire. I'm trying to pull up the article she sent me really quick. The article's just titled, "It's just stupid." It's just stupid. DeSantis stumbles in New Hampshire. It once looked like Ron DeSantis might be poised for a breakthrough in New Hampshire. Not anymore. For several months this year, Ron DeSantis seemed poised for a breakthrough in New Hampshire. Longtime allies of his chief opponent, Donald Trump, were shopping around for alternatives. Multiple efforts sprang up to draft DeSantis into the race. The Florida governor topped Trump in New Hampshire poll in January, and he sold out the state GOP's biggest annual fundraising dinner in April, helping the party bring a record haul. But in the months since DeSantis formally entered the presidential race, he stumbled in the first in the nation primary state. He got dragged into a tit-for-tat endorsement battle with Trump that generated some media attention but little measurable increase in support. His first visit to the state as a presidential candidate drew more headlines for what he didn't do: take questions from voters. That video was dumb though. Than retail politicking he did. And that's on top of polls that had already swung back in Trump's favor. There are signs that even inside DeSantis' orbit, they see New Hampshire as a challenge. The super PAC that's effectively running his operation has been off the air in New Hampshire since May, temporarily, its founder told Politico, while running a new ad in Iowa and South Carolina this week. They should do nonstop stuff. And DeSantis' visit to the state Tuesday is being met with backlash from a major Republican women's group. The New Hampshire Federation of Republican Women released a statement Thursday slamming DeSantis for planning an event at the same time as their annual fundraising lunch, an event Trump is headlining. The group asked him to reschedule. It has always been a New Hampshire hallmark to be considerate when scheduling events, the group's events director, Christine Peters, said in the statement. To have a candidate come in and distract from the most special event the women's group holds in the year is unprecedented. And so my sister talked about how stupid this was and the trouble. So from what she's hearing, and I haven't verified. I'm just going off by what she said. What she's hearing is that his team is a lot of just folks from Florida. And if you don't have someone who at least knows the layout of everywhere or a diverse kind of group, and you don't know how things are on the ground in each state and how the grassroots operates there, you're probably going to run into some kind of issues, but having an event on the same day a big Republicans group has their event, and it's a big deal to have Trump there, whether they're going to support him or not. He draws a lot of support. Obviously, a lot of people love him, support him, and just to be frank, people who may want consciously done with Trump for different groups know that he pulls in a lot of money, so they'll still use his name and at least pretend to support him right now because they get fundraising dollars. It's when they invoke his name. So just to be honest, so you can't just pull in and expect to have a competing event and be like, I'm here, come support me instead. Because even though people might go support Trump at the event or something, they might still want to go to your event if it was the next day. If it's at the same time or a similar time and it's 2 hours away, that's a huge problem. So that's a big no-no, not just in New Hampshire. It's just a big no-no. So again, I want to note that I said at the top of the hour, when DeSantis ran in 2018, his campaign was kind of all over the place. He had some issues. You're very fortunate that he ended up winning and became the governor. Andrew Gillum's not the governor. People are very, very lucky, but it was not easy. It was not an easy road for DeSantis. I don't know how much they were sure that they were going to win. He obviously didn't have a 19-point lead that first time that he won. I don't remember the points, how many it was or wasn't, but it wasn't easy. They had some issues. My sister went down for Florida at some time, I think, to help with his, that push down there, and then the recount and stuff. Is there's a recount somewhere. I think she went down to Florida, but I think it was a Senate race that she helped the recount. But she was there during the presidential race and run, and I made a video during that time. It was like for Andrew Gillum and his money scheme or whatever, but it wasn't easy. He was accused of being racist because there was some kind of thing he said, like, monkey this up. And people are like, oh my gosh, it's racist. I'm like, is it, or are you just racist? But anyway, people were, but even him attacking Andrew Gillum, people were like, oh, that's racist how he's attacking him, like, because he's black? Because he's a corrupt dude. But he had a rough time, and he's obviously not as charismatic as Trump. He's not as funny as Trump. Trump did do the job. People know how Trump's going to do in foreign policy. Trump did a lot of things that people like. DeSantis's greatest asset is that he can make the pitch that people love him, but people also hate him. He's very polarizing. A lot of independents aren't going to sway that way. At the end of the day, a lot of people in Florida, and he got 19 points because people like his policies, and though the culture war stuff maybe can or can't be annoying, whatever, they like how he governs. But that's how people experience him in Florida. That's not how everyone has experienced him outside of Florida. Outside of Florida, that not everyone is tuned in as you and I. Some people have only heard the controversies, and now they're hearing someone they did support Trump come at him, and they're calling him disloyal and all this other kind of stuff. So he has to make the pitch and make people understand what he did in Florida, and convince them to give him a shot. And it's just the most compelling point he has for him is that he can make the pitch that he can win. Other than that, I don't think he has a shot. But if he blows his shot with independents, and I'm not saying that he shouldn't be conservative, I'm not saying he should be proud of his accomplishments, and I'm very glad for, like, the stopping the parental rights and education bills and wokeness going to die and all that. I appreciate that, but you have to sell that story in a compelling way, not in dank memes. So I'm done. I didn't mean to talk about this for that long. I knew I was only going to get to 2 topics today. Gosh, I'm frustrated. I'm really frustrated. And as I said at the top of the hour, I was so excited to talk about this Jen Psaki video, just to trash her so bad. And then this Ron DeSantis thing just came and just ticked me off. So anyway, let's move on. Jen Psaki is saying something that I'm seeing quite a few Democrats mention. We talked last week about Dana Nessel, the Attorney General of Michigan, and how she was upset that in Hamtramck, which is, there's a lot of Muslims in the city, and it's all Muslim city council and a Muslim mayor, and they were like, we need to have a neutral flag policy. We're going to fly the American flag, the state flag, the city flag, and, POW flag. And there's one other like flag or whatever. And that's it. We're not going to fly a Muslim flag. We're not going to fly a super straight flag or Christian flag. And we're not going to fly an LGBT plus QIP squared to the 7th power flag or, whatever. We're not going to fly pride flag. And people were upset, particularly the Attorney General, and she went to Hamtramck and made a speech saying that it was evil. It's evil to have a neutral policy because people who are oppressed end up suffering when you treat everyone the same. And I'm not joking. We went through her speech. If you didn't see that live, I did post that story in her speech in entirety in my commentary in a separate video. It was like the last thing that I posted. So you can go back after we're done here. If you didn't watch it, you can go back and watch that video. It's pretty remarkable. But something that she said and why I brought it up is that she tried to say that, homophobia is the same thing as Islamophobia, and that they should be on the same side, because the same people who are against them are I guess basically the GOP or whatever. But I thought that was interesting because I'm like, I didn't write the Quran. Jews and Christians and Muslims have disagreements for sure, and have had historical differences for sure, but they are called the Abrahamic faiths, are they not? There's some things that intersect. So being upset at those GOP right-wing evangelicals or whatever, pretending like no other race worships great I am, just pretending that they're the bad guys, and everything's copacetic between the LGBT community and the Muslims, even though the LGBT community and these really woke progressives wanted to push books in the schools like This Book is Gay, which literally has a section in it devoted to Muslims and how to talk to them about homosexuality. Of course, they showed up in Dearborn and said, we want this out of our kids' schools. And you had all these liberals show up and say, that's how dare you not want graphic sexual material in the schools, you're hurting my feelings. And it's like, why are you offended? Because we don't want like pornographic stuff in schools, sir. Like, just because you're gay doesn't mean you're gross. So I'm like, why does this offend you? So again, like, I didn't write the Quran. GOP didn't write the Quran. So where are you at? So Jen Psaki's making the case that the GOP is using the trans community as a wedge issue, similar to like the Southern strategy in the past. So I'm not gonna play her whole segment on this. I'm gonna just start at the beginning and go from there. We'll probably just watch a teeny tiny bit of this. I'm pulling up the wrong thing. Hold on. And Jen Psaki, for those of you who don't know, Jen Psaki was a former White House press secretary before Biden's current awful press secretary. But Jen wasn't good either. She was better than the other person, and they gave her a show. Now she's on MSNBC.
Noticing the reemergence of a very old GOP playbook that harkens back to President Richard Nixon's infamous Southern strategy. During his campaign for president in 1968, the Republican Party made a concerted effort to reach white Southerners who used to vote for Democrats by playing to their fears of African Americans and the civil rights movement. And it worked. By pitting one group of Americans against another, the GOP successfully managed to split off Southern whites from the Democratic Party. Now, decades later, the right wing is...
Okay, we're going to pause right there. So there's a lot of talking points about the Southern strategy that just aren't actually true. One, about it actually being a thing, but two, it certainly didn't work. Southerners in the South started voting for GOP because of economic policies, not because of racial issues. It was for economics. It was for policy reasons. Yes, the South did. As the South got less racist, yes, more people started voting for Republicans. And I'm not saying there's not racism still in the South. Apparently there's racism everywhere. But that's the deep South did not go to next. So it's not even true. It's not even true. It's a total misconception. But a lot of what she's saying is pretty funny to me, and I'll tell you why. I'll let her talk a little bit longer.
Surviving that same playbook, this time with Muslim Americans and trans people. Hear me out here. The GOP is trying to recruit Muslim Americans, a community that makes up less than 2% of the U.S. population, against another tiny marginalized group of Americans, transgender people. It's important to remember that back in 2011, during the Republican primary, the right wing had designated Muslim Americans as public enemy number one. No surprise, given that conspiracy theorists remember the birthers? I do. Had been trying for years.
The birthers who, if you're unaware, because I know not everybody is from the U.S. who watches, the birther movement was this idea that Obama wasn't actually born in the United States. You have to be a naturalized U.S. citizen. So you have to be born either like in the U.S. or at least like on a military base or something like that. So the birther thing was that Obama wasn't really born in the USA, that he was actually born in Kenya. I think, did his brother actually say that? His brother does not like Obama. He's a Trump supporter. Anyway, Obama, it was a huge thing, and Trump basically led it about trying to get his birth certificate, and then they didn't show it for the longest time. And so the more they didn't show it, the more people were like, well, why don't you just show his birth certificate? And eventually they did, show it, and people were like, well, what? Well, we don't believe it. And so they tried to say that was a racist thing. There were definitely people who were, well, there's people who absolutely still believe that Obama was never a U.S. citizen, but people, it wasn't really a racial thing about people not believing that he was an American. I think it was more like, well, if he's not actually the president, then we can get rid of him and undo some of the harm that he's done. So I think it was more about clinging on to something. And I don't know what Trump did or didn't really believe, versus like, let me, get some attention here. I don't know. But the important thing to note about it is that Hillary Clinton is the one who started that. Hillary Clinton is the one who started the birther thing. Just FYI. Now, Jen, I don't know how long she was with Obama off the top of my head, but she was in the Biden administration, but she was also with the Obama administration too. But yeah, I remember the birther thing, and I remember people talking about radical Islamic terrorism and talking about that a lot, and that's a thing people still talk about quite a bit, and people are still concerned with. However, that's still not. You can't just point to that thing and ignore the legitimate feelings of the Muslim community and say, well, look, don't you remember when the Republicans didn't like you? What does that got to do with showing their kids gay sexual crap? What does that have to do with anything? So they're misdirecting here. And so again, we didn't write the GOP. They write their platforms. They didn't write the Quran. Their feelings on homosexuality are their feelings on homosexuality. And there are plenty of LGBT people that are like, you don't need to have it in schools. You don't need to have these really graphic books. That's like I mentioned, Gays Against Grooming. They're against that stuff. Okay. So these people fighting so hard, like, Biden and them fighting to keep this stuff in school. And when people are like, it shouldn't be there, and like, how dare you, you're removing books. No, it's not that they want to remove all books. They just want to remove some books that they deem inappropriate. And I'm sorry, things like This Book is Gay is not appropriate. That's one of the books that the Dearborn parents were really upset about. So she can go on about Muslim Americans and the GOP using it. They are using it, but they're taking advantage of the situation. They didn't create this situation. That's a really big difference. But people are gaslighting with issue with the Muslim community, and they're also gaslighting with Asians too. There's think pieces from different places and NPR and other folks, and they're trying to make it seem like Asians are being used as far as the affirmative action thing. Some of these people writing about the case, the overturning of affirmative action, aren't even mentioning the fact that Asians were like plaintiffs and had standing and proved that they were harmed and that there was discrimination. They only want to make it about African Americans and how we're being so mean to them, and they don't even want to acknowledge that there's Asian people who have been damaged by it. And somebody who ended up blocking me because I'm like, let me someone sent me the screenshot. who was it? Kasim Rashid. He's a big, just dishonest leftist. He has a really big account on Twitter, but also on TikTok. And he had tweeted, affirmative action was never about admitting unqualified Black kids. It was always about ensuring qualified Black kids could also get accepted despite a world of systemic racism. The unqualified admission you're thinking are the legacy students like how Kavanaugh got into Yale. And so I said, you know that Asian kids were like literally discriminated against. And then he blocked me. And I'm like, why was that worth blocking? Just be honest. There were actual plaintiffs in this case. And so there was an Asian mother had tweeted out. Let me just share my screen for a second so you guys can see it. I already quoted this on YouTube, so I don't know. Remember if I shared this or not. So this woman said, I told my daughter that today is a big day. They've ended affirmative action. Isn't that what you've been fighting for? She asked. I said yes. And so Soul Dad O'Brien here said, and I think has 1 million followers, by the way. Congrats on screwing over other people of color, ma'am, particularly those whose efforts in the civil rights paved the way for your family to come to America. The thing about civil rights is, though, you're supposed to move forward. You're not supposed to have this animosity, this chip on your shoulder your whole entire life, and not want progress for other people, to pull up the ladder for them. To be like, no, we want our special privileges, and we still need racism because it is racist. They're okay with discrimination. They're okay with discrimination as long as people are discriminating against Asians and they're the hurt party, and you get something good for you. And then Jamil Hill, who said, can't wait until she reads that you gladly carried the water for white supremacy and stabbed folks in the back whose people fought diligently for Asian American rights in America. I would like a long list provided by Jamil Hill of rights that she fought for Asians. I would really like to see that. I'm sure it'd be very, it probably doesn't exist. But how can you say that these people who said, hey, we don't want to be discriminated against, that's them carrying water for white supremacy? If white people wanted to be like, yeah, we want a more of a shot to get into Harvard or whatever, and we want it to be fair, that it has nothing to do with the fact that you're actually literally discriminating against Asian people. No, they were literally discriminated against. That's not a disputed fact. It's not a disputed fact. So some people are ignoring it altogether, or when Asian people point it out, they're trying to say, too bad, so sad, you should suffer, and you're a bad person for pointing it out. Just really ridiculous. Really, really ridiculous there. So this coalition, people are mad because they're like, oh, Republicans are trying to tear people apart. They're trying to use these Asians against the Black people, and they're trying to use these, the trans people to get these Muslims on their side. People are Republicans are like looking around, and they're like, oh my gosh, we are the Big Tent Party. This is our chance. Let's do it, boys. And by the way, I don't think they're probably doing a great job. They're maybe like looking around. I don't think they're probably like boots on the ground doing as much recruiting as they should be, right? They're probably not. not from what I really kind of observed. I'm not saying they're not doing anything, but could they push harder to recruit and build those bridges and stuff? Yes, they absolutely could. But what's funny though, Jen, and all the Democrats out there is that the Democrats are the ones who have a long history of trying to pit races against each other. In the past, they would be like, those Black people, they suck. Right? You poor, dumb white people, at least you're our white people and you're still better than a Negro. And there's a TikTok that I stitched some time ago. Someone had found a ballot of I think a senator. We'll look at it in a second. And I looked into it and that person. So I'm going to play that TikTok. so you guys just know a little bit of this history. And you know what's the funny thing about history? We are not that far removed from this.
I found a 100-year-old ballot tucked inside of a book, and I couldn't help but notice.
Okay, so I looked up that J. Thomas Heflin, and man, that was a racist dude. Got his big start arguing that in Alabama, black people shouldn't be able to vote because they're supposed to be servants of white people. Pandered to white supremacy, bankrolled by the Klan, rumored to be in the Klan, fought against interracial marriage. When he was in the House, he seriously wounded a black man, shot them. He ended up getting charged, but the charges were dropped. And he bragged about how that was one of his biggest accomplishments. It's so bad. And you'd think it would have to be like prior to the 1900s, but it wasn't. 100 years isn't that long ago. I had a grandma who passed away. She was 102. He served in the House. He served in the Senate when he couldn't get reelected. FDR appointed him to the Federal Housing Administration. And I know a lot of people look at FDR glowingly, but he had a lot of bad policies like redlining that happened under him. And his idea about living wages also mirrored eugenics talking points, which was popular during that time. But my party switch. Me. So,
out of a book, and I couldn't help.
So Democrats were the party of white supremacy, right? And the Republicans are the party of America first. That ballot is a little more than 100 years old. And yes, it is a real ballot with a real person on there. So that's actual history. That's actual history right there. So yes, they would pit people against each other. And so African Americans, eventually when the tide started changing, they're like, oh, we gotta. Well, first they started appealing to different groups by offering them things like FDR. FDR did not have, he offered a lot of things to people, right? But he had some racist things that actually did not work out well for African Americans, though people look at him so glowingly. Like when people mention systemic racism, the first thing that people mention is redlining. That happened under his administration. And I mentioned in my video, the minimum wage, for those of you who don't know, the minimum wage is like steeped in eugenics, and they knew that it would disadvantage it wasn't just like a race thing that there was different social classes of nationalities of white immigrants and stuff that they weren't fond of either. It wasn't just like, we don't like black people, we don't like Chinese people. There were some groups of white people they didn't like as well. But so it wasn't purely racial. But there were certain people that they didn't want to compete with. So if you would work for $5 and the uppity white kid, like that's the wage, $5, and they don't want to work for $5, they were like, okay, well, we need to get minimum wage passed. So it's like $6 because I'll work for $6. But I know that they would rather hire me than hire them. So they're going to be out of a job, but I'm not going to be out of a job, and I don't have to work for less. But I could have a job, even if it was a less money, but it was a competitive wage. So they didn't like that idea of a competitive wage, and they knew it would work because they did it, I believe in Australia, and it worked on the Chinese. So there was different eugenicists that thought that we should push them in wages. There's quite a bit of literature on it. But Royal Meeker, who did he work under? He worked under a president. But he knew that the minimum wage would make black people unemployed and it would lead them to welfare. And he thought it'd be good if they were on welfare, because if they were on the government teat, they'd be easier to control. So you can feel how you feel about minimum wage and living wages and all that stuff, but that's just the history. That's just the truth. Very fascinating stuff. But anyway, FDR started promising different things. And so people think like the big party switch or something that had happened with Goldwater and all the black people just left or whatever. That's not what happened. It started happening earlier with promises of different things in the New Deal and stuff. And so they started like getting some black support there, even though they maybe weren't fond, because they're like, Republican Party is a party of the free the slaves and stuff, but we would like some goodies and stuff. And it didn't even end up really panning out for them. But but there was like a big exit of Black voters from the Republican Party with Goldwater. But people were mad at Goldwater because of his stance, his libertarian stance on this, like, Civil Rights Act and stuff, which he supported some of it, but not all of it. And it wasn't out of racism, it was just out of like overreach of sort of government. But then a lot of people kind of had an exodus and stuff. Like my dad has like a really vague memory of his mom just being upset about it and stuff too. But you had people like Wallace who said the line about the I'll have those hold on. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to. I'm sorry, it wasn't Wallace. I knew it wasn't Wallace when I said it, but I'm like, it's somebody else. It's somebody else racist. LBJ. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's why I was like, I'm wrong. I'm really wrong. So LBJ allegedly said that I'll have those N-words voting for him for 200 years. Now that's actually an unproven quote. It's unproven, but there's a lot of evidence of him saying similar things that lend credibility to him probably saying that. But once the tides were turning in the position of progress, it became evident that they had to like not go against the tide. So once they, LBJ was like, okay, well, let's go along. And they went along, and then they got, Black vote, and they've been continuously voting Democrat, no questions asked, for a very long time. It's and even though LBJ is I think of him as a pretty awful kind of racist dude, there's some people like Michael Eric Dyson, who I've heard him say the great LBJ, and there's different like people on the left who are Black Democrats and stuff who like hold him in high regard. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, did they put the gun to your head in history class or something? So with that being said, now the Black people are like their protected shiny class, right? So Asians, they do really well. So they're, in a lot of cases, they see Asians as white adjacent. Thomas Sowell had a breakdown of like different colleges and other folks, or like when they look at different like qualifications for who's a minority and who's not, they would kind of not include they wouldn't include Asians in the group of minorities, so they could say, look, these minorities aren't doing well, but then they have white and Asians separated from minorities. So it's okay if this other group of these Asians get discriminated against, as long as they're being kind to the Black people and still, essentially buying their vote with special favors and victimization. And I think it's so crazy. And I meant to mention this last week when we talked about affirmative action stuff. But when my dad was a kid and he'd go to a place and you saw someone Black working somewhere like up front at some kind of like government building or something, and they're like a secretary and they're up front and they're just typing with their fingers going. People kind of had the mentality back then, if there was a Black person there, they were the best. They were actually the best. They were actually the best, that they had to work because there's so much discrimination that they had to work so hard to get there, that they were probably the best there, period. That was the mentality. So now we have affirmative action. So many people are like, are you here because you're Black? Which, by the way, some people have been admitting that and saying that, like, no, I only got into school because of affirmative action. Joy Reid said that she got into Harvard because of affirmative action. She's like, I only got in because of affirmative action. I'm like, I think that's really poor on Harvard's part, because Joy Ann Reid says some just stupid things on TV. I don't know if she plays a moron or she genuinely is one or whatever, but there's people saying that they only got in, and they said, well, it's good that they got in because they were able to prove that they belong there. But it's still not good that you discriminate against someone along the way. Now, people are bringing up legacy. The legacy stuff is so funny to me, because if Harvard is saying that they need to discriminate against people's races in order to have it be more diverse, they could just get rid of the legacy stuff, could they not? Because if you don't have legacy spots just taking up, all these spots of people that they'd admit, you would have more people of different ethnicities who could get in, but just by their just merit. Because you just have more spots to fill. Maybe there'd be a lot more Asian than white kids, but there'd be black kids as well who didn't have to have be jerry rigged or whatever in there. They just be in there, but they don't want to do that. And people who keep bringing up legacy cases and stuff, that wasn't the question that the Supreme Court was trying to answer. The question was, can you discriminate against these people based on their race? And they said no. They said no. and I think that's the right decision. So if they want to if someone wants to prove damages and take them to court over the legacy admission thing, you can do that, but it's a separate thing. So people pointing the finger, again, it's a separate thing. But if Harvard wants more diversity, they could just make it merit-based, and you'll just naturally get diversity and have no legacy admissions. Now, they're not going to do that because they probably see those donor dollars being important, the influence of those families that are there, and the power of loyalty from these powerful families. And I understand that. I think the biggest thing is our perception of Harvard standing, because because if you know that that a lot of people get in there who don't deserve to be there, and there's people, and they openly also think that it's okay and good and perhaps even moral to discriminate against other people based on their race, then why is it that we hold Harvard to such high regard? I think that's really the big problem, is that we view these colleges as such a big deal, when maybe they're immoral institutions doing immoral things, and you can learn a lot of the same things in other places. I'm not saying you're not going to get a world-class education from Harvard, but you can get a really good education in other places too. People have this, it's a perception of the Ivy League or in the status and the power that makes it what it is, and why people want to go there. Ben Shapiro talks about when he got into Harvard, like the first day, they were kind of like, you made it in. You basically made it, like point blank. Like here, like you think it's going to be. It was like the process of actually being in school and doing things wasn't what was important. Just the fact that you got in is you just made it in life. So if just the fact that you went there is all that really matters, I think we need to question why we've allowed ourselves to feel that way. But anyway, the Democrats are the ones who are pitting people against each other, and have historically done that, and are continuing to do that. And it's even fun. I've said this many times, how they'll come after right-wing evangelical people as if I don't believe in the same God just because I'm Black. They'll be like, oh, those right-wing evangelicals, and how the Christian nationalism, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, we read from the same book. What are you talking about? But they don't go hard after Black voters, because Black people just like religiously vote Democrat. And if you don't, then they just like undermine you, call you Kuno, a bunch of kind of stuff. And they try to undervalue your actual Blackness. That's what they attack. Joe Biden, you ain't Black if you don't vote for me. People do those sorts of things. You're corrupted by whiteness and all kinds of different stuff. But if you're a Black voter and you go to church and stuff, they know that you're pretty much not going to let your religion interfere with you voting straight party, take a Democrat. And that's a bad thing. That's not a good thing. And people need to self-examine why you've given such loyalty to these people. Especially because if you really analyze, I'm sure they do a lot of things you don't like. I guarantee you that a lot of Black people, it's not just Muslims, don't like a lot of this stuff going on in the schools. But you know what? People have to be aware of it, and making dank memes on Twitter ain't gonna do it. That's not going to inform, the 50, 60-year-old voter who's working or maybe retired and just living their life, and they're not on Twitter chronically. So if you don't reach those people and try to inform and have a conversation, that is also your fault. The GOP has tried sometimes, but can I say that they've made a really grand old effort to really get these people? No. Should they really have to? Voters should be responsible for consuming knowledge and making informed decisions. But people aren't always that way. And the name of the game of politics is that you got to try to convince that voter to vote for you. So, but that's on the GOP. That's on the GOP. But Jen Psaki trying to gaslight everybody and pretend like the GOP has this grand plot to just use everybody against each other. This is a decision that you've made. This is a atmosphere that you have created. We didn't create it. A better question would be, why are you allowing like less than 1% of the population to drive so much policy? Why? That's a better question. Why are there so many trans visibility days and awareness this? And why did our assistant health secretary, who is a trans person, say we're going to have a summer of pride? Why is there such a low percentage of the population driving so much of the narrative, driving so much of our political conversation? And I ask that question a lot because I don't entirely get it. Politically, I mean, I think they always like the other to advocate for, but it is a small number. It's only so many voters, right? But I think it's because there's so many different ways you can legally try to silence people you don't like the religious right, for example. They're so mad about the 303 creative case that just happened. Which we talked about this on Friday, but I think most people really agree with the fact that the government shouldn't compel your speech. But there are hypocrites out there that would really like the government to compel speech when it comes to things that they like. So if you're an LGBT person, you do want, and not, there's libertarians on this issue who are LGBT. And I've met some and I'm mutuals with, and I've had plenty of conversations. So this isn't a blanket LGBT thing, but there's a lot of people in the LGBT community who believe, and I would dare say most probably, but that's an uninformed kind of opinion, but I'd have to see some data, I guess, but it feels that way. But we'll say a lot of people in the LGBT community feel that the government should be able to compel you to like bake a cake or host a wedding or something, even if it violates your faith, because they don't want to be discriminated against. But religion is also a protected class. And people are like, well, you can still worship your God and still do this thing. Living my life in obedience to God is part of my worship. So no, I can't. The whole duty of man is to obey God and keep his commandments. So it's not just me going to church and hearing a sermon and singing a song. You don't clock in and clock out for 2-3 hours and put in a little time throughout the week. That's not how religious people live their lives. I don't know if maybe there's some religions that act like that. And certainly there are people who deem themselves to be Christian or other faiths, and they do clock in and clock out. They go to be seen, pay their dues, and then they go live their life like like they ain't saved or whatever, and then they come back on Sunday, pay a big offering and be like, yeah, I'm a good Christian here. And I don't like that. I don't appreciate that, but that's not how I live my life. So no, you can't just compel people you disagree with to do things because you want it to be done, and you wouldn't like it the other way around. Like I use this analogy of, would you like the government to be able to compel a gay baker to make cakes for a conversion therapy camp? And I don't think there's a person on the planet who agrees with that. I don't like absurd absolutes. So maybe there's somebody, but largely most political affiliations would reject that. But you have, the Supreme Court, who was just so upset in their dissent, and you have all these talking heads who are so upset because they want submission and obedience. Again, why do you feel, because it's not fair if you only think it works one way. But we already know that they're not into equality. Like Dana Ness will let you know that they think equality is evil, because the oppressed will suffer in an equal world where we have neutral policies. So they believe in it being unfair. They think that they should have to play on easy mode in life, right? They think we should have the handicap. And that's obviously not fair. But why are you driving so much policy? Because let's say if it wasn't a conservative court, and let's say instead of 6-3 in the opinion for the creative, graphic designer and stuff, that it was that Trump didn't get his nominees, and it was 6-3 the other way. If that were the case, and they said that the government can compel people to do certain things based off of there's, and not discriminate against someone for their gender identity or sexual orientation, even if they're religious, because that is still bigotry, then our First Amendment would be severely harmed, not just for religious liberty, but our freedom of expression, our freedom of association. So I think if you want to do damage to those institutions, I think them using the LGBT community is a good route for them to do that. So, and I think it's pretty evident, because Jack Phillips has been sued multiple times. And the first time they ruled in a Masterpiece Cake Shop, it was a very narrow ruling, which allowed him to get sued by some trans people, because Colorado had anti-discrimination policy. And so things would be really, really different right now if Trump didn't win in 2016 and get 3 picks on the Supreme Court. If Merrick Garland was there instead of Gorsuch, and there were 2 other picks there, we'd have a very, very, very different outcome with these rulings. Not just these rulings, but like back in COVID, there was a ruling, I think it was another 6-3 decision, and I'm like, this should have been like everybody on the same page, because it was clear that in New York they were acting differently with churches as far as being open versus like bike shops and other places. And so the court ended up ruling on the side of free speech, and the dissent were upset about it, and it was another win for free speech, but it didn't have to be. So we just be in a really different place. In a really, really different place. Anyway, that's it. That's it for today. Went a little long. I hope you guys enjoyed the show and my rants and my feelings. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content on my website, videos, articles, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation to blacktnews.com/donate. Cost of stream, run my website, all the good stuff. So if you can support, I very much appreciate it. Someone said that a Biden ad played during my video, my live. That's funny, but yeah, I'm still monetized on YouTube, so dollar bills, y'all. So yeah, so if people do want to leave super thanks or super chats and stuff like that, I can't do that. If you're watching on Facebook, you can give stars. But the easiest way to give is to go to the website, because I mean, I don't know how much Facebook takes when you send a star, but I guess I don't know off the top of my head how much YouTube takes. But they do get a cut when you send stuff. So I do appreciate when people send super chat and stuff. If that's the way you would like to do that, and that's more convenient. I just appreciate whatever you do. But if you do want to give, you can go directly to the website. Check out different merch that we have at the store. I will show you what I will be sporting on 4th of July. I have to find a parade. I told my niece, she's 5, that I'm like, like it's America's birthday this week. It's our country's birthday. She's like, what? Are we going to celebrate it? I said, yeah, we always celebrate it. I'm like, we have fireworks and people barbecue. I'm like, and there's parades. And she's like, a parade? She was so excited. And she's like, have I ever been to a parade? I was like, I don't know. And so I'm like, would you like me to take you to parade? And she was so excited. So I'm trying to find a parade near her house. One that's not too early, because she's 5 and it's the summer. But yeah, I'll totally be wearing my Frederick Douglass shirt tomorrow to celebrate the 4th of July. So I hope you guys enjoy the holiday. I will still be streaming, so you guys can join me on 4th of July. But again, thank you for watching and commenting. All those things really do help, and it's very much appreciated. God bless you guys. See you tomorrow.